class that you would like to see. I will call out one in the middle, private equity. You'll see abbreviated PE and then VC for venture capital. We have been running overweight compared to peers to both private equity buyout as well as venture capital investments. Very recently, this has been a bit of a headwind due to markdowns, especially in venture capital, which has been a headwind recently in the portfolio. But I think the perspective that we all need to take is longer term, that has been a very nice tailwind to this portfolio. So headwind over the short term due to valuations, but long term has served this portfolio very well. If there's not any questions, I will go ahead and move to the non-endowed portfolio. I'm going to skip ahead to page 22 for those following along. Also up on the screen here. So the non-endowed portfolio, very safe, conservative, and liquid, high quality as well. Mostly cash money markets, and then very short-term, high-quality fixed income securities. You'll see at the very top right, for the fiscal year to date, up 2.4%, largely in line or exceeding benchmarks there. We do break out the cash pool. That is where your cash money market investments are held. Money market rates north of 5%, just about 5.25% as we sit here today. So sitting in cash has been a very comfortable place for investors, and you are being rewarded with higher interest rates than we have seen in the past, which for a very long time were close to zero. I will make one mention. We do have that liquidity pool there as well at the top right of this page. These are your short-dated bonds, but longer than cash and money markets. It should be noted that money market rates will react the quickest to interest rate changes. So the day that the Federal Reserve hikes interest rates, you can see a bump in money market rates the next day. It does take a little bit longer of a time period from a duration standpoint on the liquidity pool to start benefiting from higher rates, but ultimately once you do, those rates should be locked in for longer. So if the Fed happens to start cutting rates, which is expected in mid-2024, we can see money market rates start to fall. I say this as a refresher. Last quarter, we recommended trimming the cash pool and moving that into the liquidity pool, so essentially moving from cash to short duration bonds. We did pick up a yield improvement in doing so, and this group did agree to do that in 2 phases. So we accomplished phase 1 towards the end of June. Phase 2 will be completed end of August, September, and we did move $100 million from the cash pool to the liquidity pool. We did $50 million at the end of June, and we'll do the remaining $50 million here towards the end of August into September. Any questions on the non-endowed?
What's the current yield for the liquidity pool?
Last time we checked was around 5.7%, so we're picking up about 0.5% or 50 basis points extra over the money market.
Okay, thank you.
I say last time we checked because it's been a very historically volatile time for interest rates, so the market is very fluid there. Okay. If there are no further questions on the performance review for Q2, go ahead and move to our 1 recommendation, if you'd like to, please.
This will complete item C, Regent Madison. I'm sorry, this completes item C.
This completes.
Yes, it's just item C.
Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. This item was presented for information only and requires no action by the committee. The next item listed on the agenda today is item D. Approval is requested to delegate authority to the Chancellor to negotiate and execute contracts for the hiring of a U.S. high-yield bond manager for the University of Houston System Endowment Fund and partial redemption of existing U.S. large-cap equity funds. Mr. Bartley, would you please introduce this item?
Yes, thank you. As Mr. Walter just mentioned, he'll be talking about
I
a
don't think your
recommendation.
mic is on.
I'm sorry, thank you. He will, Mr. Walter will be talking about a $40 million recommendation into a high-yield bond fund for the endowment portfolio funded from existing managers. So let me turn it over to Mr. Walter to discuss it in more detail.
Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. You'll see here on this page our NEPC's current opportunities. There is one new one that we call out in the middle. And essentially what this is we are recommending that we trim our U.S. large cap equity exposure. We do feel that valuations from a U.S. large cap equity market perspective are stretched. So this is taking some risk off the table at the portfolio level and specifically at the U.S. equity market level. There are some interesting trade-offs that we think exist in today's market environment. And alluding to my earlier points, that is largely driven by the increase in bond yields courtesy of the Federal Reserve's interest rate hiking campaign. Our recommendation here for manager is a company called Barings. If you're unfamiliar with Barings, Barings is owned by Mass Mutual. So it has a lot of its roots in the insurance culture. And translating roots in the insurance culture means that they are hyper-focused on avoiding any permanent asset impairments. They're focused on getting their interest and principal returned to them. So Barings is a conservative manager within the U.S. high-yield bond market. So we are taking a conservative approach with this recommendation. You can see Barings here with their track record up at the top of this page. As Mr. Bartlett mentioned, we are recommending a $40 million investment. And as mentioned, we would recommend trimming. I want to emphasize that we are not recommending getting out of U.S. large cap equity. We do want to maintain that long-term strategic exposure, but we are recommending a trim to it to the size of about 3 or 4%. Large cap U.S. equity will still remain one of the largest allocations in the portfolio, so just wanted to emphasize a trim. Two managers that we would be trimming is the Russell 3000 Index, which is very heavily weighted to U.S. large cap equity, and then also Columbia-focused large cap growth, which is exclusively focused on U.S. large cap equity. So question I would ask if I were in your shoes is this a defensive play? Is this a very cautious play on behalf of NEPC and your portfolio? I would say yes, but we have seen these trade-offs exist. Looking at yields in the high yield market, and we frequently measure them with the spread over treasuries. Looking at it this morning, we're getting close to a 4% spread over U.S. treasuries. Now again, interest rates have been very volatile. It is very fluid, but that has put yields in the high yield market at over 8%. I think where we sit here today, we're just under that, but we think that that's an attractive trade-off going into high yield bonds, trimming some U.S. equity risk. And it is actually an expected return from here forward. We believe that returns will be higher in the U.S. high-yield bond market than they will be in U.S. large-cap equity. So my last comment on the high-yield bond market is it is a volatile area as far as fixed income is concerned. But when you look at it in context compared to where we're trimming it from, the U.S. equity market, as measured by the S&P 500, typically exhibits a volatility of around 15%, as measured by standard deviation. The U.S. high-yield bond market has historically exhibited around half that volatility. Seems to swing between about 7 to 9%. So to my earlier point, this is taking some portfolio and equity market risk off the table and we hope to be able to capture that, I'll say 7% plus yield within the U.S. high yield fixed income market. So happy to answer any questions. That does conclude my comments on this recommendation.
Mr. Walter, I just asked, let's say a year from now, the Fed stops raising interest rates. How would you look at then this strategy as that starts playing out? Interest rates go down. I guess the equity market still could be soft.
Yeah, if the Fed is going to start dropping interest rates, it would have to be something, I'll say, negative in the economy. So dropping interest rates, while it may affect both the bond and stock market because there may be stresses within the market at that time, declining interest rate environment would ultimately benefit borrowers. And in the case, high yield borrowers that are reliant and having to pay higher interest rates ultimately would benefit. So I would say it's a trade-off between economic conditions, but also a declining interest rate, if that does come in sometime in 2024, would be stimulating to the bond market as well as to the equity market.
Could you give us an example of some of the, I guess, the high yield companies that Barings has in this portfolio?
Sure. Historically, energy has been a large sector in the high yield market.
Imagine this.
I know I'm in Houston, I realize that. Yeah, so energy has been a major component of the high yield market. So that's probably historically speaking. Recently, so lately, due to some stresses in the banking industry, you've seen a larger contingent of financial stocks in the high yield market. But our ultimate call here is structurally, we think corporations are in decent shape. Their balance sheets are in decent shape, albeit starting to, don't want to say show some stress, but there's obviously some headwinds that are starting to present themselves in the market.
Regent Madison, if there are no other questions from the members, this would complete item D.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
No, ma'am.
May I hear a motion to approve this item as presented?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This item is hereby approved by the committee. No further board action is required. The next item listed on your agenda today is item E, update on minimum funding levels for endowments at the University of Houston and fundraising at the University of Houston system. Ms. Eloise Rice, Vice Chancellor, Vice President for University Advancement, will you please introduce this item? Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. So I'm going to talk about two things. One is raising the endowment minimums, which is, it's been a long time since we've done that. And then also just to let you know where we are in fundraising and the campaigns that we're focusing on right now. So just as an overview, we continue to rely very much on big gifts. We've had a great year in terms of some very large gifts, naming the College of Nursing. We have a big gift that has gone for the Stanford Alexander Center for Real Estate. We have capital naming gifts. We have Innovation Hub naming gifts. And we have the Houston Endowment. And then we have a slide up there that's talking about the campaigns. The other thing that continues to be a thread of what we're doing here is to raise funds for the Aspire Challenge Grant that you've heard about before, which is a $50 million anonymous gift, which challenges us to raise another $50 million. And so we are more than halfway toward that. That is, so, but the 5 campaigns. Like many institutions, we realize that it's probably a better strategy right now. We think it's a better strategy to have focus campaigns or micro campaigns. And so we have 5 of them. We have a $300 million campaign for scholarships. We have a $150 million campaign for the faculty chairs and the institutes and centers that we're working on. We have $150 million for athletics, and then we also have $100 million for the Tillman J. Fertitta Family College of Medicine. And I'm sure that our chairman here will be happy to take any large gifts today for that in order to finish that campaign. And then we have the You Matter campaign, which is really focused on participation. Yeah, we have over 300,000 alums now. We have probably just as many people who are our friends and parents who want to support. And so, but with regard to alumni, we want to be very intentional about letting them know that we are interested in building the community and engagement, not just with giving. So this participation campaign is really about, it's about philanthropy. Much of the gifts are obviously smaller gifts, but it's also about ways in which they can engage, whether they're with the constituent alumni associations or participating with social media, or being volunteers for us. So we're tracking all of that now. My goal is that we would get to 25% of our alums, which would be, maybe not sound grand to you, but by other comparison with other institutions, that would be great. So this is a campaign, we're looking at it, micro campaigns, to finish by 2027. So you can hold me accountable for that. Yes?
Eloise, isn't the alumni participation percentage one of the U.S. News and World Report?
So it has historically been part of the U.S. News and World Report. It was for a long time 5%, so it didn't move the needle, but all institutions were certainly working toward getting, and we've done well in that regard over the years. They reduced it to 3% a few years ago, and now the expectation, and I think it's pretty clear, the expectation is it will not be counted at all toward that. But we nevertheless are going to keep moving on that because we know that there were 25 years between campaigns. There were a lot of alums who were not connected, so we're still going to drive to get the alums part of that. Are there any questions about the campaigns? Then I will move on to the endowment minimums. So the endowment minimums were last changed in the 90s, and we have made several times we thought we should raise the endowment minimums at the university, but we didn't really think our donors were ready. We do think that they're ready now, plus everybody knows about inflation. You know that it takes more money in order to, I don't think that was the right button to press. That one maybe there's more hope for. Okay, so what we're intending to do here is to raise these endowment minimums on September 1st. And then we will have a year where we keep so they will become effective September 1st of 2024. So we'll have a year when we could talk to donors about establishing minimums at the current level. And we think that will provide some real inspiration for donors maybe to move who otherwise might think, well, I'll do this in a future year. We did benchmarking this summer, and we think that we're very much on a par for what would be Big 12 standards as well as standards across the state. And then this is just the timeline, so we're going to move into action quickly, and then over next summer we'll be hopefully closing a lot of gifts as this winds down, and then starting with the new endowment minimums next September. Are there any questions? Yes.
What are primary ways that you engage with alumni? Is this through phone calls, social media? What are the main methods?
Well, it used to be phone calls, but those don't work too well. People are in the grocery store when they're answering their phone, and they don't want to give credit cards, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's very much social media. Direct mail works surprisingly well. I think all of us think, that shouldn't, but it works well if we do it strategically. A lot of it is engagement, events. We visit with people. And talking one-on-one. There's nothing like hearing from some of our other university leaders about the importance of what philanthropy does.
Can we go to the previous slide? I was wondering.
I only see an arrow to the right. There we go. Yeah.
I was wondering in 2022, how many of these different chairs we had, and how many we already got this year, 2023. Different
For the Aspire chairs only?
endowments.
So the Aspire chairs, in the last year, we have completed, I would say probably 10, maybe 11 of those. We have, so the chairs require the anonymous the naming donor and then the anonymous donor matching those. So as I said, we're over $50 million that we've raised so far.
And how much more do you have left to go before you've exhausted that?
We have about another, So let's see, so we're at 56, so we're a little over halfway. So, and it depends, because donors give either $1 million or $2 million. We don't know exactly the number, whether they're coming in at 2 or at 1. We have some major proposals pending right now with other donors. So we'd expect to maybe get another 12 or 13.
What I was curious about is from 2021 to 2022, numbers of these endowments increased, or they are at the same level, or 2023, they have gone up as compared to 2022.
2023, we are a little bit down. Now, of course, we're judged against the $50 million commitment that was from last year. But increasingly, endowment's a challenge for donors. I think with the market coming back and our great investment results, I think the kind of information that you just gave in terms of our endowment results versus peers really helps donors. But we've gotten some very big gifts, but I think overall we're hoping that this strategy to have a year where we have the current endowments and then go up to larger amounts will really help us in the long run and the short run too.
I was wondering if we need more manpower or more personnel to get more endowments and more. So you got the question.
And I did not plant that question, I guarantee you. Well, clearly, we would do well to have more person power in our division. I think that one of the things that I and my colleagues are all trying to do is to figure out how we can do things more efficiently and with technology. We did a computer conversion this past year. We had a 23-year-old computer system, which was a crazy quilt, and so we're figuring out how we can use that new system in order to really use technology. That's what we're going to have to do. Even if we were to add more staff, which would be great, and I appreciate the question, what we know is that our alumni base is growing really fast, and so we have to be much more efficient at what we do. We've got to figure it out. Stay ahead of the curve if we can.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Eloise, I had one other question.
Yes.
The entry in the Big 12, has it generated obviously more alumni interest? How do you latch onto that? Is there a strategy you've developed with other constituents in the space?
Well, we're at the beginning stages of it, certainly. We had a good year. This year we'll end up with raising more than $40 million in athletics. Now, that isn't just across the board, but what will roll out over time is certainly a way in which this affects all the fundraising and I think raises the level. We'll be doing things, competition with other Big 12, comparisons with other Big 12, as well as just working on raising ever more money for athletics.
Eloise, what
Yes,
is the difference between a professorship and a college professorship?
So a college professor, one is less expensive.
Yes.
And it's within a college, and by definition, obviously. It is traditionally for a more junior, maybe an associate professor, as opposed to a full professor.
Got it.
And particularly when you get up to the dean's chairs and the chairs, those are really usually, obviously they're traditionally tenured, full professors, national, a national reputation.
I think it's great to have something available. The kids' 500,000 is still significant.
It
So
is very
It's
significant,
great to have
right.
something to designate for that gift.
Yes, those have been important. And sometimes what donors will do is set up a college professorship
And then advance it.
and then add more, and we just change the gift
Is that
agreement.
what the letter campaign is about when you said you're reapproaching prior donors?
Yes, we're going to be
To
doing
see
that.
if they'll upgrade to the new level?
Exactly, yes, for both scholarships particularly, I think, because those have been at a fairly low level. And I think people can see much more money is needed against tuition these days.
And so while we're on the conversation of top 50 and the whole idea that completion scholarships are becoming more and more important, are we working on a special fund for that?
We are, so that's within the $300 million scholarship campaign. So we're working with.
So it's a subset of that campaign?
That's correct. So, and all the
Because
scholarships
I think
will
that's
be.
an exciting one for all of us to promote because that story is so compelling.
It is, and we're hoping to get the stories out there and to really make sure that the philanthropy is going into the right buckets to make sure that we
So
keep
that
the
we can
students
get
and
on
move the
this
graduation
issue
rate.
rolling count for getting our graduation rate up. We need to identify these kids that are, these young scholars that are almost there but might take a little, one semester longer than would help us on our count. Helps them, helps us, it's great for everybody.
We need scholarships that'll recruit the students. We need scholarships that'll help them stay in from year 1 and to 2,
Exactly.
and then
I'm very
scholarships at the
excited
end.
about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much. Any other questions? Thank you.
No, Eloise, has done a great job, and I think if you asked her to look into the future, the next 10 years, first off, the quality of the student, not to knock all of us that went to the University of Houston, is much better today than it was 20 years ago and 30 years ago and even 10 years ago. These people are going to be more successful out in the community, and then being a part of the Big 12, it doesn't only help the athletics department, it helps all the different schools. And I've been saying this, to this meeting for the last 15 years. And I think when you look back in 10 years, that where last year we did $40 million, you said? I think that.
For athletics?
Just
Yeah.
for athletics?
Just for athletics, yeah. So we're,
And overall, what did we do last year?
last year we did 170. This year we're at 135 with a few more weeks to go, and so,
You'll see $400, $500, $600 million years just because of the exposure and people wanting to be a part of the university. And once again, I think the quality of the student that's graduating, that's going to make money and be an entrepreneur in a great city like Houston in the USA. So
Everybody
Thank
loves
you.
to jump on a success story.
everybody does. So good
Faster
job,
you
Eloise.
run.
Thank
Well,
you very much.
Eloise,
kind, thank you.
we appreciate you so much. Thank
very
you.
nice. Thank you. I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
This item was, do we have any further questions? This item was presented for information only and requires no action by the committee. I would now like to move the next section listed on your agenda, Section 2, the executive session. It should be noted that executive session will not be held today. Does anyone have any further questions? If not, there being no further business to come before this committee, this meeting is hereby adjourned.
All right. Thank you, Regent Madison. And we will now move, Mr. Chairman, to the Audit and Compliance Committee meeting. And I believe we have our
All right, come on, guys.
participants. Greg, you didn't comment when he said energy was in that distressed bond market.
I was pleased to hear it.
I tell him it's because Moody still has outlook for oil at $53 long-term, and it just beats everyone down.
I look at it as a buying opportunity.
It's an opportunity, and that's
Okay.
exactly what he's looking at. Those bonds are probably underrated.
They are.
Okay. Bill, Susan, you ready? Morning, everyone. Welcome to our meeting. As chair of this committee, I would like to call to order the Audit and Compliance Committee meeting of the University of Houston Systems Board of Regents. We have 6 agenda items that were presented before the committee today. 1 action requiring committee approval, and 2 action items requiring committee and board approval, and 3 items which are being presented for information only. I would now like to introduce our first item requiring committee approval, the minutes of the Audit and Compliance Committee held on May 18th. Does anyone have any corrections to the minutes? If not, would I hear a motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. The minutes of the May 18th Audit Compliance Committee are hereby approved. The first item listed on your agenda today is the presentation, and it's item C, a report on the University of Houston Systems Institutional Compliance Hotline Report for the 3 months ended July 31st of 2023, an annual compliance initiative. Mrs. Susan Coach, System-Wide Compliance Officer, would you please present your report?
Thank you, Regent Moore. Can you hear me okay?
A little closer to the
There
mic.
it is, there it is.
How about now? A little bit. Okay, I think I got it. So, good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm presenting the Institutional Compliance Report, which details the hotline reports received during the 3-month period ending July 31st, as well as our annual compliance initiative. This first slide shows a breakdown of the fraud and noncompliance hotlines reports received for each institution during the months of May, June, and July of 2023. On the following slide, the primary issue associated with each hotline report across all system universities is detailed. As you can see, the primary issues identified in the hotline reports during this 3-month period covered a broad range of areas. The categories receiving the most hotline reports related to employee relations, abuse of power, and ethics violations. There were 43 hotline reports in total, with 32 received for University of Houston, 6 received for UH Downtown, 2 received for UH Clear Lake, and 3 received for UH Victoria during this period. This represented a decrease in the number of reports received during the previous period, which was 54. The following several slides detail the issues reported for each of these universities. And then moving on, as part of this report, I would also like to address our annual compliance initiative for the upcoming fiscal year. We intend to focus on research security due to the recent proliferation of multiple federal and state regulations, including NSPM 33 and Texas Senate Bill 1565, which set forth specific requirements for the protection of sensitive research and the maintenance of national security interests in a university setting. To comply with the scope of requirements under these regulations, it will necessitate a collaborative effort involving the Division of Research, the Office of Compliance and Ethics, and IT security. We will be focusing on implementing processes, policies, and protocols as part of an overall research security program that promotes secure academic research while mitigating the risk of foreign influence. In addition, we will be working with a consultant with expertise in export controls and foreign influence controls to assist us with the development and implementation of elements of this program. This slide details some of the specifics that will be addressed in the upcoming year to address research security, including the implementation of a research security program. Some of the work is already underway, and other aspects will be undertaken during the upcoming year. For example, a requirement imposed by recent Texas legislation is the adoption of a policy by the governing board of each institution of higher education to establish a policy framework for research security, which is one of the policies that is before this board tomorrow for approval. We expect to be able to meet research security compliance requirements in a timely manner. And that concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Susan? Let me just add, this is a lot of work right here, which y'all just see. And Chancellor, thank you for your support in doing this. We're on a great journey with research and how we're going to grow it and expand it. And this will be a great way to make sure we stay inside the boundaries. So thank you for the great work, Susan, and the rest of the team on this. If no other questions, we'll move on to item D. State required report, employee reporting of incidents of sexual harassment, sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking. Ms. Rebecca Lake, Associate Vice Chancellor for Equal Opportunity Services. Please give us your report.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with all of you today. This is my first opportunity to address the System Board of Regents. I joined the System Office for Equal Opportunity Services during the pandemic to serve as Director of Investigations, and then was recently in the fall promoted up to be the System Title IX Coordinator. So the report that you will find today is an annual required report by the state of Texas. It looks at a subsection of reports that our offices receive that are made by mandatory reporting employees. And so under these categories, you will find reports for sexual harassment, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. We do cover several other issue areas under other system equal opportunity policies. The data you see is a summary of quarterly reports that we provided to the Chancellor's Office as required by state law. It covers a reporting period from July 1st of 2022 to June 30th of 2023. You will find 5 summary tables within the report. So looking to page 14 is an example of the summary table for the system, and then the other institutional campuses each follow. Within the report, you will find the number of confidential reports we receive. Those are from entities such as university counseling centers, which do not provide the identities of the involved parties as they are protected by law. But you will also find the resolutions, how we proceed with cases either for full formal investigations or resolve with other informal services summarized for each of the campuses. I'm very fortunate to be able to work with a team of Title IX coordinators across the system. Lori Ruiz heads the University of Houston Downtown campus. She came with many years of experience from the Office of General Counsel. David Britton heads the University of Houston Clear Lake office with previous experience within the System Equal Opportunity Office and legal external experience prior to that. And Brandon Lee heads the University of Houston Victoria office with many years of student affairs experience. So we have a broad range of experience on our team, and so we are keeping abreast of the many changes that flow from state and federal legislation in these complex areas, and I would appreciate taking any questions today that you might have about the report.
Any questions for Ms. Lake? Mrs. Lake, thank you very much. Rebecca, thank you for your presentation. And thank you for your good work.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks. All right, this item was presented for information only and no committee action is required. Next on our agenda is item E, a report on the University of Houston System Audit and Compliance Committee Charter and Checklist. Mr. Philip Hurd, please present this report.
Thank you, Regent Moore. This is an annual review item. It has been reviewed with council. There are no recommended changes at this time.
Okay, good. So call for a vote following item E. Thank you. Do we have a vote to approve or leave it as is? Do I hear a motion? Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. This item is hereby approved. The next agenda item presented will be item F, a report on the University of Houston Systems Audit and Compliance Committee Planner. Mr. Hurd, please introduce this item.
Thank you, Regent Moore. Again, this is an annual requirement. It has been reviewed with council. There are no recommended changes at this time.
Okay, again, any questions? If not, do I hear a motion to approve this item as presented? So moved. Second? Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye. All right, this item is hereby approved by the committee. All right, the next item on the agenda today is item G, a report on the University of Houston System Internal Audit Reports. Mr. Hurd, will you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Regent Moore. There are two reports for your approval, contracts requiring Board of Regents approval, which are contracts over $1 million, and compliance with the Texas Education Code. There is nothing in either of these reports that really rises to the level that the board needs to discuss. They both went through with no real issues noted.
And I will also add that Philip and I have reviewed these too, so, and I agree with him. It's a good report, and, any questions though? And, all right. So this item was presented for information only and no committee action is required. Our next agenda item is H, the report on the University of Houston System Annual Internal Audit Plan. Mr. Hurd, please present this report.
Thank you, Regent Moore. If you could please turn to page 50 in your materials. This is the definition of internal auditing under our standards. At least once a year, I'm required to let our governing board know what that definition is. I've tried reading it, adding to it, but the bottom line is we are an organization that is independent. We consult on activities, and we find any issues and bring them to the governing board. That's the bottom line. The second part of this each year is letting you know whether we have appropriate folks on staff. If you turn to page 51, you will see that almost all of my staff is certified in one or more areas of expertise. Largely that's certified fraud examiners and certified internal auditors, although we do have some information systems expertise on staff as well. If you turn to page 52, you will see the current and ongoing audits. Those are outlined as things that we have going on. I would call your attention, we have a number of special investigations, if you look at the last line. So what that means is compliance issues that have come through Susan's hotline, we actually have to take a look at and track down. So that accounts for a large number of audits, although it only appears as one line on the plan. On on page 53, you will see our proposed audit plan for the next year. This takes into account risks that were identified in this previous year, and analysis of the risk assessment interviews with the executives at each of our member institutions. There are a couple on there that I will draw your attention to. About 3/4 of the way down, you will see that there is an inventory of protected health information. You may remember that there were a couple of incidents a year or so ago of leakage of that information. We're going to do an inventory to determine exactly what is necessary in terms of audit and review of that information. We will be working with our CIO and others who have a stake in that. So again, while it represents only one line, that is a significant effort on the part of the internal auditing department. You will also see a couple others that have risen there. One of them is donor agreement expenditures. In consultation with some of the executives, there was a request put forward that we take a look at how we're actually spending our donors' money. And certainly, I think Eloise earlier elaborated too, there's quite a bit of it that comes through. So we simply want to make sure that we're doing that properly. Last and not least of what I would like to call your attention to is continuous controls monitoring. Again, that is one line on the audit plan, but it represents the data analytics as well as the artificial intelligence. And this year we will actually be automating some oversight, looking for fingerprints of problems, and we have high hopes that this will give us a huge increase in our ability to return to the different campuses. So are there any questions on the proposed audit plan at this time?
All right, hearing no questions, do I hear a motion to approve this item as presented?
So moved.
Second? Okay. This item, all in favor?
Aye.
This item is hereby approved. So this concludes the presentations and approval of our agenda items today. May I hear a motion to place 2 action items unanimously approved by the Committee on the Board of Regents consent docket and agenda? Do I hear a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this item has been unanimously approved by the committee and will be placed on the Board of Regents consent docket agenda for final board approval at the board meeting tomorrow. As follows: the report on University of Houston System Audit and Compliance Committee Charter and Checklist, and the report on the University of Houston System Annual Internal Audit Plan. No more questions. This will conclude the items that are listed on the agenda for action. I would now like to move to section 3 listed on your agenda, the executive session. The committee will now go into executive session pursuant to the sections of the Texas Government Code listed on page 2 of your agenda. That's where everyone gets to. Okay. I would like to now reconvene the Audit Compliance Committee meeting. The Regents met in executive session and consulted with the Chief Audit Executive and General Counsel on various legal matters. There was no action taken in executive session. Does anyone have any further questions? If not, let there be no further business to become before this committee. This meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you, Mr. Hurd, Ms. Coach. Thank you very much. All right. I assume next on our agenda is something out of my control.
I don't think it's the Academic and Student Success Committee.
Donna, do we want to continue, or do we
I think we maybe take a short break.
take a short break?
Yep.
Okay.
I think that's smart.
Ted has to say.
We're just going to take a short break. You do not have to leave. We're not going to be in executive session.
You got a bag.
Put my luggage out here so somebody else can trip over it. All right.
We're good to go.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our meeting. As chair of the Academic and Student Success Committee, I would like to call the Academic and Student Success Committee meeting of the University of Houston System Board of Regents to order. As a quick reminder, please speak clearly when presenting or making remarks so your comments can be recorded correctly. We have 5 items that will be presented today before the committee. 2 action items for the committee and the board's consideration, and 3 items for information only. Following the presentation of the various action items, I will ask the committee if there are any questions and call for the vote. Once all action items have been presented and approved, if appropriate, I will make a motion to place these items on the board's consent docket agenda for the final board approval. I would like to introduce our first item requiring committee approval, the minutes from the Academic and Student Success Committee held on May 18th, 2023. Does anyone have any corrections to these minutes? Do I have a motion to approve these items as distributed? Thank you. All in favor? The minutes from the May 18th, 2023 Academic and Student Success Committee meetings are hereby approved. The first item of the committee's consideration and approval today is item C, approval of a faculty promotion to academic rank, University of Houston Downtown. Dr. D.S. Chase, Senior Vice President of Academic Affairs and Provost, will you please introduce this item?
Thank you. Board approval is requested for 1 faculty promotion and tenure recommendation from the University of Houston Downtown. Faculty promotion and academic right is an item that we do have approved in May. This one individual, due to various extenuating circumstances, was not included, and we would like to have that promotion approved now. This individual will receive an increase in compensation starting September 1st.
Thank you, Dr. Chase. Does anyone have any further questions? If not, may I ask a motion to approve this item as presented?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Is all in favor?
Aye.
This item is hereby approved. The next item listed on your agenda today is item D, approval of faculty workload report, University of Houston System. Dr. Chase, will you please introduce this item?
Thank you. By Texas Education Code and the UH System Board of Regents policy, each system university must present a faculty workload report for the academic year, fall and spring. And that's what's being presented today. We use a comment reporting format across all of the institutions. It includes information on the percentage of effort that each faculty member spends in teaching, research, and service across each of the institutions, along with their salary and the courses that they've taught. The reports or the individual faculty workloads look a little bit different if you look from 1 to 1, based on what their assignments are, and also based on what kind of faculty they might be. We use those mostly internally for things like our annual performance evaluations. So unless you have any questions, I would like to seek approval.
Thank you, Dr. Chase. Does anyone have any further questions? If not, may I hear a motion to approve this item as presented?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. This item is hereby approved. There is a lot of work that has gone into these reports, pages and pages of information. I can't believe how much time has been spent in preparing these reports. That's wonderful. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next item listed on your agenda today is item E, introduction of Dean, the Honors College, University of Houston, Dr. Chase. Will you please introduce this item?
Yes, thank you. I'm really pleased to introduce to you Dr. Heidi Appel, and I'm asking her to come join me up here at the podium. She is our new dean of the University of Houston Honors College. Dr. Appel comes to us with more than 20 years of higher education experience, which includes her role as dean of the Jessup Scott Honors College at the University of Toledo. In her role at the University of Toledo, she led an institutional effort to establish common goals for honors education across all majors, as well as university-wide revision of honors curriculum. Other achievements, and actually she has many, this is just a short list, include helping to facilitate a partnership between the University of Toledo and Toledo Museum of Art to bring visual thinking into the undergraduate curriculum. She is internationally known for her research on chemical ecology of plant-insect interactions, so ask her about that on the sidelines, and was recognized as a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science in 2018. She holds a doctoral and master's degrees in biology from the University of Michigan and bachelor's degree in general studies from Oakland University. Her appointment began on July 1, and I'm delighted to introduce her to you today.
Thank you, Provost Chase, for that kind introduction. The Honors College, as many of you know, cultivates the already talented and highly motivated students at UH from all majors. And the reason I'm standing here, the reason why this Yankee packed up her bags in May and moved to Texas, if we use the parlance of Senator Cruz, is that this is such an exciting place. This campus is the most innovative I've experienced and read about in higher ed. And the Honors College is one of the best in the country. And it's one of the best for very specific reasons, is because it had the forethought not only to maintain a terrific foundation in a strong liberal arts kind of general education curriculum, but because it developed a set of interdisciplinary minors, open to all students, not just honor students, which really take the thinking and learning of bright students to a level that starts to prepare them for the challenges that we all face, but they're going to be in charge 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road. So I'm thrilled to be part of that, to build out those minors, and to support what is an amazing talent pipeline, not only for the city, the region, for the state, and for the country. Thank you.
As an honors student myself, I just want to commend Dr. Appel. I'm so honored that you're my dean. The Honors College is strategically aligned with our work in advancing research. Some of the best conversations and ideas I've heard came from faculty and students there. So I can't wait to see your direction, and so excited to continue this semester.
Thank you.
Dr. Appel, congratulations. Thank you for being here. My daughter got her honors degree back about 20 years ago from Honors College. Yeah, so thank you for being here. Dr. Chase, thank you very much. This item was presented for information only and no committee action is required. The next item listed on your agenda today is item F, introduction of Dean, College of Education, University of Houston. Dr. Chase, will you please introduce this item?
Thank you. I am pleased to introduce to you Dr. Catherine, we call her Kathy Horn, new Dean of the University of Houston College of Education, and actually the first woman to serve in this role at the University of Houston. Dr. Horn joined college faculty in 2005 and most recently served as interim dean and previously chair of the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Studies. Dr. Horn serves as executive director of the Institute for Education Policy, Research, and Evaluation, director of the Center for Research, Evaluation, and Advancement of Teacher Education, and director of the UH Education Research Center, one of only 3 state-approved entities with access to Texas PK to 20 and workforce data. She worked previously for the Civil Rights Project at Harvard University, the National Board on Educational Testing and Public Policy at Boston College, and the Houston Independent School District as a high school teacher. Dr. Horn has been honored with numerous awards, including a Fulbright Fellowship to Chile, a UH Teaching Excellence Award, and appointment as an American Council of Education Fellow. She was selected as an American Leadership Forum Fellow in 2023. She is past president of the UH Faculty Senate and former chair of the College of Education Faculty Executive Committee. One of the reasons I ended up joining UH, she was part of that search committee and a really great spokesperson. Dr. Horn earned a PhD from Boston College, an MED from UH, and a BA from Rice University. Her appointment began on June 1.
Sorry, that was a mouthful. Probably what I really want you to know is that I am the daughter, granddaughter, and great-granddaughter of public school educators. I'm also the granddaughter of a West Texas firefighter and his wife, a West Texas nurse. So this notion of ensuring strong public education is available to everyone and that we create healthy communities in which we all thrive is personal for me. College of Education is an amazing place. We hold 2 of 10 of the fastest growing majors in both, or the largest and in one case fastest growing majors in health and also in teaching and learning. We also produce about 15% of the PhDs and other doctoral degrees in the university. So we're proud of the way that we're contributing to the student success mission of the institution. We're also doing our part in research. I grew up in a house, a dad and a sister and a whole bunch of uncles and aunts who are engineers also, so I'm really excited that we sit in competition with our engineering NSM and class colleagues in terms of research expenditures. Just in the last 3 weeks, we've been awarded $3.5 million to help double the number of teachers we're producing by engaging in accelerated pathway work in partnership with our districts. We've also received almost $2 million from Health and Human Services to help ensure that we are understanding and implementing evidence-based work to prevent teen pregnancies. So we are hard at work on behalf of the President and the Chancellor's mission. It is a joy and a privilege to serve as dean at this university that I love so much. Deans have opportunities to build relationships and clear paths, and I'm grateful to do both. Thank you, Provost Chase, for the opportunity, and to the university and the board in particular for the space. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Dr. Horn, congratulations. Yeah, thank you for being our Dean of College of Education. Dr. Chase, thank you very much, and this item was presented for information only. No committee action is required. The next item listed on your agenda today is item G, Success Story, University of Houston. Dr. Chase, will you please introduce this item?
I would like to introduce Dr. Richard Walker, the president of UH Clear Lake, to present this item.
Thank you, Dr. Chase. We are excited at the University of Houston Clear Lake to present this student success story for us, which is a partnership, a student development partnership that we had started this last year with Boeing. Let me see if I can get this wrong way. Eloise, now I know, there we go. So in September of 2022, the University of Houston Clear Lake entered into a partnership with Boeing to provide students entrepreneurial learning opportunities that directly tie to what the students are learning in the classroom, to specific workforce development projects through a work order system. This is not a traditional internship. It is specific projects that Boeing is working on, and they've asked for student talents to help achieve these goals. UH Clear Lake is only one of 4 institutions of higher education in the country with which Boeing has established this student development program. The other 3 are the University of Central Florida, Auburn University, and the University of Alabama at Huntsville. Funding for these paid internships is provided by Boeing, and our students are employed as University of Houston Clear Lake student employees. It's truly a university-wide effort. It's the Office of Strategic Partnerships, who you'll meet the executive director momentarily. The Office of Strategic Partnerships was established and reports directly to me as president to look at experiential learning opportunities across the institution in all colleges and all majors, to really focus on workforce development initiatives. Here with us today is Dr. Natalie Pecknell, the Executive Director, who you will hear from momentarily, and I also want to introduce Bernie Streeter, who works directly with our students, our program manager of the program. Also central to this is the work with the College of Science and Engineering. Miguel Gonzalez has been the Dean of the College of Science and Engineering and instrumental over the last year in helping this program be successful. Unfortunately, Dr. Gonzalez is out on leave, but with us today is Dr. Robert Phelan, the Interim Dean of the College of Science and Engineering. We're also engaged and involved with the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs, who helps us manage this project, and also through Human Resources. I'd like to have Natalie tell you a little bit about the opportunity of the program, and then you're going to hear from 3 students who are currently experiencing and working for Boeing and their experiences with Boeing.
We can advance to the next slide. Looks like I'm going backwards. There we go. All right. So before the ink could even dry on that agreement between Boeing and UHCL, our team began to meet with departments and divisions to launch the program. Our first information session was held in October, and 2 students were on the job within a month. This past spring, over 100 engineering students attended that second session, and we doubled to 4 student placements. So as you can imagine, good news, paid positions, and a pretty big employer name travels quickly on campus, and became evident that our students are eager to pursue these types of experiential learning opportunities. So this program is designed to be a full student development experience. They have to apply to a pool of candidates that includes resume approval and mock interviews with our career service office. They must complete high security clearance, badging, and new employee orientation, and then in turn, Boeing provides the technical engineering work, supervision, and training. At the conclusion, students complete a learning evaluation to measure competencies like communication, critical thinking, and leadership. In the first year, we've observed that the students have actually become a true cohort. They communicate with each other, they support each other's work, they co-train the newbies, and they have even unofficially delegated a leader of the group to advocate for them as a whole. This is a career preparation program. It combines personal development with professional skills and that technical work experience. It infuses real-world work into the academic experience at U of H Clear Lake. And we believe that it will serve as a driver for future recruitment into our science and engineering programs. Next slide, please. Okay, so as Dr. Walker mentioned, we are a subcontractor of labor for Boeing, and that requires a lot of behind-the-scenes processes and internal collaboration. So all of the offices that he mentioned, they support the contract, task orders, invoicing, payroll, budget reports that are all required of the prime contractor. We do this because it's an opportunistic venture for our university and our students, but it's also mutually beneficial for the company. As you know, the space industry has more projects than ever and have critical hiring needs. Boeing's goal with this program is to hire as many full-time employees as possible. Although our students are making a competitive student salary, this is a much lower salary cost for the company, as you can imagine. It also reduces their full-time staff workload by hiring our students to do entry-level work. And it also reduces their full-time headcount because we employ them through the university instead of directly with the company. The last is the flexibility, not a traditional 8 or 10-week program. We can hire students from that pool of candidates within weeks. So that placement goes very quickly, and the students can stay on board as long as they're eligible through graduation. So programs like these, Senator Cruz stole our thunder a little bit, but programs like these are not only changing students' lives, which you will hear shortly, but we believe it's going to transform our Gulf Coast workforce region and the way aerospace companies look at U of H Clear Lake as a critical hiring resource. So, next slide. These are the numbers. So again, this has been within 1 year. We have a total of 8 students currently in the program. They earn $18 an hour. We have had 1 student already converted to full-time hire, one of our female graduates from the spring. She is now a systems engineer with Boeing. The contract, we've reached over $200,000 in just the first year, and that was with 3 task orders on critical aerospace and space industry projects that the students are going to share with you. Partnerships like these are transformational workforce initiatives for U of H Clear Lake and the space industry, which is growing by leaps and bounds in our own backyard. So it's been a pleasure to watch this program take shape. We anticipate more down the road, right, Dr. Walker? There's more to come. And we want to thank him for his visionary leadership and his get it done now attitude. So I'm excited to introduce the students that they can now share their experience at Boeing. Advance to next slide. These are our students.
Hi, my name is Jacob Howard. I'm a senior year mechanical engineering student at UHCL. I want to extend a special thank you to Dr. Walker and Dr. Pecknold and Bernie Streeter with Strategic Partnerships for making this opportunity possible. As a kid, I wanted to always be a pilot, and my eyesight eventually grew worse. I had to get glasses. That wouldn't work out anymore. But then I thought, what if I could just design the airplanes? So I set myself on a path for engineering, and at first I wanted to just open a window to get into the industry, but with the opportunity that was given to us, or that we earned ourselves, a whole gate opened. The whole door, the whole everything opened, and I feel more prepared than I have ever been in order to be a full-fledged engineer starting in the industry right as I am about to exit college and enter the workforce full-time. Thank you.
Howdy, y'all. My name is Jose. Also a Texan here. You know, been here since, well, I was born. Right? You know, I grew up here in the Brazoria County. Not, you know, we're next door to Harris, right? But Boeing has definitely opened my eyes to see the potential of what I could do as an engineer. For me, growing up, NASA always seemed as something that was just awe-inspiring and something to look up to, and something that really seemed tangible. But now that I'm within the Boeing environment, I see the things and the projects that I can work on. Actually, projects that I'm working on right now, too, doing with advanced visualization, AR, VR development and research, and also doing rapid prototyping with the other engineers that are working on NASA, things that I cannot mention here, but you know, they're very exciting, and if it wasn't for strategic partnerships, I don't think this would be something that I could even imagine being a part of. So thank you, UHCL, and thank you all, U of H Maine, for, and Board of Regents for bringing all this together and for giving this opportunity. And I'll pull up to that.
Hello, everyone. I'm Walker. I'm a junior mechanical engineering student at UHCL. Most of my background, I guess, before Boeing was actually gained at UHCL as a design research assistant. So thank you, College of Science and Engineering, our deans over there. And I was scouted because of that, and that's the base of the work we do at Boeing is design focus. We're in the field of environmental control systems. So the majority of what we do is design-based work. It's a really practical experience, and it bridges the gap between education and profession. It's been a great learning opportunity for me, and I really want to thank Ms. Streeter, Dr. Pecknold, and President Walker. Thank you.
So as you can see, it's something we're very excited about, and our students are very pleased to have this wonderful opportunity. It's really about thinking a little bit differently about what we've typically considered in traditional internships and kind of flipping it on its head to say it's very project specific. Boeing comes to us, as you heard, with very specific task orders. They are working on contracts that actually Boeing has on very specific projects. It was really interesting because they were told you can't talk specifically about what project you're working on because that's a confidential matter. But we're excited about this opportunity that we have at University of Houston Clear Lake, and we'll continue to advance it. And in fact, Regent Moore, I'm going to share some information with you at a break about our new agreement we're signing with KBR, which we'll be signing in September. But they're happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
I was wondering what kind of project it was. Was it some kind of material testing with a universal testing machine or what? Or can you share that information or you have signed NDA?
I have to kill you, I can't tell you.
Without getting in trouble.
So we can't name the specific projects we're part of, but I can speak for four of the students. We're all part of the same program, and it's design-focused work. So you can imagine 3D modeling, CAD modeling, modeling for like installations for on how the mechanics would install certain things and such.
As for my department, I work in the Center for Advanced Visualization Engineering, and our primary focus is to help other engineers get a better understanding of their prototypes, whether that is with 3D printing or that is with AR and VR development.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Guys, thank y'all. That was a great story. We appreciate y'all coming up, and we're really proud of not only the school and leadership, but the three of y'all very much. Thank y'all very, very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Dr. Chase. This item was presented for information only, and no committee action is required. This concludes the presentation and approval of the 2 action items today. May I hear a motion to place these 2 action items unanimously approved by the committee on Board of Regents consent docket agenda? Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. This item has been unanimously approved by the committee and will be placed on the Board of Regents consent docket agenda for final board approval at the board meeting tomorrow, August 24, 2023, as follows. Number 1, approval of a faculty promotion in academic rank, University of Houston Downtown. Number 2, approval of faculty workload report, University of Houston system. If there are no questions, this concludes all the items that are listed on the agenda for action. Section 2, the executive session is the next item listed on your agenda. It should be noted that the executive session will not be held today. Does anyone have any questions? If not, there being no further business to conduct before this committee, this meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's snacks in the foyer too, by the way.
What?
There's macaroons.
Would you please take care of it? Well, next week I've been getting my own stuff. I mean, you know, we don't even have a replacement. I'm gonna have to
got yelled at for not having a clear runway.
Takes pictures first.
Yeah.
Raymond, they don't want you in their picture, by the way.
This is gonna be a good
We'll wait till someone gets this photo.
Put it right there.
There's some really exciting things you're gonna miss, John. As chair of the Facilities, Construction, and Master Planning Committee of the University of Houston System Board of Regents, I'd like to call this meeting to order. We have 3 items listed on your agenda today, and all 3 items are for the committees and board's consideration and approval. I'd now like to introduce our first item requiring committee approval, the minutes from the Facilities, Construction, and Master Planning Committee meeting held May 18, 2023. Anyone have any corrections to these minutes? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve these minutes as distributed? And a second? Thanks, Alonzo. All in favor? All right. The minutes from the May 18th Facilities, Construction, and Master Planning Committee meetings are hereby approved. The first item to be presented to committee is item C. Approval is requested for appointment of committee members and appointment terms for the University of Houston System-wide Public Arts Committee with an update on the University of Houston System Public Art Committee activities for FY 2023. Ms. Emily Mesa, Senior Associate Vice Chancellor and Senior Associate Vice President for Administration, will you please introduce this item?
That's okay. Let me take the first part of it, and she'll take the second part.
All right, Raymond, go ahead.
Thank you. So we're requesting approval for the appointment of 6 new committee members and 1 alternate, including the reappointment of 1 member for the University System-wide Public Art Committee. The recommended committee members were selected as part of the process prescribed in the UH System-wide Public Art Committee Operating Procedures Manual. At this time, we are requesting the appointment of 4 student members representing the University of Houston Clear Lake, University of Houston Downtown, and University of Houston Victoria for 1-year terms. The reappointment of a representative from the Vibrant Campus Task Force for a 1-year term. The appointment of a representative to support University of Houston Victoria, that'd be a 3-year term, and the appointment of an alternative representative to support UH Clear Lake for a 3-year term. The biographies for each of the recommended appointees is provided in your materials. If there are no questions with respect to this portion of the item, I'd like to pass the microphone to Dr. Emily Mesa, who will provide an update on the UH System Public Art Committee activities for fiscal year 2023.
Thank you, Raymond, and good afternoon. I'm delighted to be here today to present our annual University of Houston System-wide Public Art Committee update from fiscal year 2023. Thank you so much to committee members, Regent Agrawal and Regent Madison, for their support, guidance, and leadership to our committee. Next slide, please. There we go. Okay, our collection grew this year with the major acquisition at the University of Houston John M. O'Quinn Law Building with the commission by Houston-based artist Rick Lowe. The line was installed in this building in spring of 2023. We also grew the collection with the gift at UH Victoria from William and Linda Reeves, and this is a collection of Texas-based art. So we're delighted to celebrate that with President Glenn. We also saw a significant increase in audience engagement from fiscal year 2022 to 2023, with the biggest increases coming from Houston art maker and art seeker audiences and our K-12 educational field trip programming. This picture on the slide is from one such field trip at our temporary exhibition, Jorge Pardo's Folly, which opened last October. We counted more than 25,000 visitors to this artwork during fiscal year 2023. It's hard to explain the impact of our K-12 programming using slides, so I'll share a very short video with some images from our education and outreach programming this year, which included such programs as watercolor classes and drawing classes at both UH and UH Downtown, as well as field trips by local school children to these 2 institutions. In many cases, we were also able to offer double feature programming with School of Music opportunities, opportunities for art making, and opportunities for campus tours such as the Brain Lab at UH. Educators wrote to us following these field trips that the students experienced not only art but campus life at these 2 institutions and brought these experiences back to their own schools. So here's a little video of what we were able to provide this past fiscal year in terms of outreach opportunities, and we plan to grow and expand these offerings during the coming fiscal year. We also had significant press highlights this year from regional, national, and international publications. On this slide, you can see some of the publications that highlighted our commissions, our temporary public art projects, and our partnerships this past fiscal year, and we continue to work to elevate the reach of our public art program. And this year, we also highlight 2 gifts of art that enhance the collection. A gift of 19 artworks by Shirley and Don Rhodes, which will be featured in an exhibition at the Blaffer Art Museum this October. And again, the gift from Linda and William Reeves that will be celebrated at UH Victoria this fall with a symposium. In honor of UH Victoria's 50th anniversary this year, this particular gift focused on Texas artists working during the mid-1970s through the present. This concludes our highlights from this past fiscal year. Thank you again for the opportunity to present our updates and highlights from the University of Houston System-Wide Public Art Committee. Thank you.
First, let me ask, does anybody have any questions for Dr. Mesa on this incredible growth of the program as well as the educational engagement? And we need to get those young kids comfortable on campus so they'll want to come back when they're ready for college, right?
That's exactly right.
Any questions?
I just don't want to miss any opportunity to congratulate you on just your hard work and the wonderful job and the vision of our chancellor to figure out that we had this art collection and it just needed to be spotlighted. But it has taken a lot of work and we're grateful to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Raymond, is there a motion on the new members of the committee we need?
Yes.
Approved? Okay, so need a motion to approve this item as presented? Second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. This item is hereby approved by the committee. Thank you again. The next item to be presented to the committee is item D. Approval is requested to delegate authority to the chancellor to negotiate and execute contracts for design and construction for the Conrad and Hilton College of Global Hospitality Leadership Expansion and Renovation Project located in the Central District at U of H. Mr. Bartlett, our Senior Vice Chancellor for Administrative and Finance, would you please introduce this item?
Yes, sir. We are requesting at this time an increase in the total project budget for this particular project to not to exceed $35.5 million. The project was approved in February of 2019 by the board at $30.4 million. The increase is due to market conditions, some additional requirements that were part of the project post signing of the GMP, as well as unforeseen conditions, including when we broke into the old facility to connect the 2 towers, mold that required a fair amount of remediation. So at this time, we're requesting not to exceed $35.5 million for the total project cost, although I will say we are working diligently to bring that number down. Any questions?
Questions or comments? The building looks great, but there obviously were a lot of extenuating circumstances in construction. Okay, so may I hear a motion to approve this item as presented? Second? All in favor? All right, this is approved by the committee. The last item to be presented to the committee is item E. Approval is requested to delegate authority to the chancellor to negotiate and execute contracts for the design and construction for Agnes Arnold Hall and Auditorium located in the Central District at U of H. Mr. Bartlett, could you please introduce this item?
Yes, sir. This project actually started out as part of our core project in 2016 with a total cost for the project based on then scope of work at $22 million. We have since expanded the scope of this project and lifted it out of the core and are treating it as its own project. The total project cost will be $61.1 million for this particular project. Just to give you some context, the Agnes Arnold Hall is 162,000 gross square feet. We're also going to do major renovation work on the auditoriums, which adds another 10,000 square feet. The original scope was what you might consider a little bit of a light refresh and working on some mechanicals. This scope, however, is expanded considerably to address some security concerns around the building, as well as going deeper into the MEP of the project. As I said, addressing the auditoriums, dealing with classrooms, faculty, offices, roof, and various and sundry other items. So significant increase in scope to the project and seeking approval for $61.1 million. This project will, if we can, well, it's not on the screen, but this project is expected to, in fact, it'll start design in the summer of 2024, and we expect completion by spring of 2027. We have already completed phase one, which was a light refresh in terms of some cleaning of the building, addressing the elevators, which was the most significant investment in phase one, as well as providing some temporary screening on the veranda. And phase two will address access control, some security cameras and other security measures, and we will put in the permanent screening on the veranda, which will be a thin tension cable, so that from a distance it almost kind of blends in and it disappears. We'll provide additional security access control, and then, as I say, phase three will follow thereafter, and that's where the bulk of the work will be done in phase three. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on Agnes Arnold Hall? The building's been around a long time. Okay, now I hear a motion to approve this item as presented. Second? All in favor? All right, it is approved. This completes the approval of our three action items for the committee's consideration and approval today. May I hear a motion to place these three action items on the Board of Regents consent docket agenda? Second? All in favor? Following three action items unanimously approved by the committee will be placed on the Board of Regents consent docket agenda for final board approval tomorrow, August 24th, 2023, as follows. 1, approval is requested for appointment of committee members and appointment terms for the University of Houston System-Wide Public Art Committee with an update on University of Houston System Public Art Committee activities for FY 2023. 2, approval is requested to delegate authority to the Chancellor to negotiate and execute contracts for design and construction Conrad at Hilton College of Global Hospitality Leadership Expansion and Renovation Project located in the Central District at University of Houston. And number 3, approval is requested to delegate authority to the Chancellor to negotiate and execute contracts for the design and construction for Agnes Arnold Hall, an auditorium located also in the Central District at the University of Houston. Any other facility construction questions for Mr. Oliver, who we didn't get a chance to hear from today?
I think you might give me a little later.
Or Mr. Bartlett? All right, section 2, the executive session. Next on the agenda, it should be noted for the record, an executive session will not be held today. Any last questions or comments? Last chance. This meeting is hereby adjourned.
I know what you want to ask.
What you were thinking.
Oh,
I know.
There's a unanimous question from this side of the table. How's Cullen Boulevard look?
Actually, I am happy to report that they have made very good progress over the last 6 months. They have completed the travel lanes. The majority of the sidewalks are complete. There are some gaps in the sidewalks that they are working to resolve. Landscaping has begun. So the county has made great progress. They're not done though. I'm not going to say that.
So
But I do-
September 15th,
it's coming
ready for
quickly,
prime
and
time.
I do feel like they will, at this point, we're pushing them on the remaining of the sidewalks as well as cleanup. That is one of their weaknesses in maintaining the site, so.
We can sick Region Raven on them.
Great progress, but not there yet.
That's one reason, Jack, the whole meeting here, we can't go check it out as easily.
Okay, we will move on to our last committee meeting. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our meeting. As Chair of the Finance and Administration Committee of the University of Houston System Board of Regents, I would like to call this committee meeting to order. As a quick reminder, please speak clearly so your presentations and remarks are recorded accurately. On our agenda today, we have 5 items that will be presented, and all 5 action items require committee and board approval. After each action item has been presented, I will ask if anyone has any questions, then call for a vote. Once the presentations have been concluded, I will then seek a motion to place the approved action items, if appropriate, on the board's consent docket agenda for final board approval at our board meeting held later today. I would now like to introduce our first item requiring committee approval, the minutes from the Finance and Administration Committee held on May 18th, 2023. Does anyone have any corrections, deletions, additions to these minutes? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve these minutes as distributed? Second? Okay, Gregor. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The minutes from the May 18th, 2023 Finance and Administration Committee are hereby approved. The next item listed on your agenda is item C. Approval is requested for the University of Houston System fiscal year 2024 financial plan and budget. Mr. Bartlett, will you please present this item?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. About a week ago, I think our board office mailed out to you a plan and budget for fiscal year 24. Included in there is a tremendous amount of detail, a lot of tables, some narrative that kind of describes our sources and uses of funds, as well as the allocation of those resources. What I will do here in this presentation is to do a summary of this plan and budget that was presented to you. Next slide, please. Go back. Thank you. So as we think about the fiscal year 24 budget and the environment in which we were, each of our 4 universities was developing its budget, we certainly had in mind these specific issues. With respect to enrollment trends, each of our universities made enrollment assumptions with respect to their budgets, given that tuition and fees are a substantial part of our funding source. That range of assumptions is anywhere from flat to -5%, depending on university. That trend in terms of enrollment is something that we have been monitoring over the course of the last several years. It's a national trend. We're fortunate in the state of Texas that it's not as pronounced, but nonetheless, we are also being impacted by that overall trend of declining enrollments. Nonetheless, each of our universities is developing strategies and initiatives to retain and recruit students. I'm pleased to report that FTICs are up for most of our universities for the fall semester. Transfers and continuing students, it's kind of a mixed message at this point, and we still have until September the 6th to continue to get students in the door before our official reporting date. With respect to enrollment, and we'll see in the budget, some of our universities are using our cash reserves to balance their budgets. The premise here is that there's a belief in some of the strategies that have been put in place will create the enrollment that is necessary to support their future budgets. Suffice it to say, if those enrollments don't materialize, of course, they will have to take other corrective measures. Retaining and recruiting talent is a top priority of our universities, and that's reflected in our budgets by virtue of merit allocations at the University of Houston, University of Houston Downtown, and the University of Houston Clear Lake have a 2% merit pool for fiscal year '24, and UH Clear Lake and the University of Houston are also adjusting salaries based on market analysis. UH Downtown did theirs over the last couple of years. We at the University of Houston will be phasing it in 2 years, over 2 years. Inflation, of course, continues, although it has lessened. Nonetheless, the impact of inflation, we have felt it, and we see it in wage pressures and costs for services. Our universities are certainly trying to combat that through being much more efficient in the way they conduct their business, reallocating funds where necessary, not filling vacancies, and other efforts to improve efficiencies. There are no tuition increases for fiscal year '24 in our budgets, as you may recall, as part of the plan with the state of Texas in the last legislative session. There was a freeze on undergraduate resident tuition for fiscal years '24 and '25. Our universities chose not to raise any tuition for fiscal year '24 on any of our students, given the inflationary impact that the impact of inflation on our families. And then lastly, there's a change in revenue streams. You'll see, obviously, with the Texas University Fund, that $1 billion endowment, or $1.3 billion endowment if you include NRUF that was rolled into the new Texas University Fund. Pending approval in November, the University of Houston would see an increase in funding from the state specifically for that as a bridge funding for that endowment. Of course, our entrance into the Big 12, with that comes additional revenues to athletics that are self-generated, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then again, we receive some additional funding from the state as part of the plan holding tuition constant. They added more money to the formula. They provided some additional funding for Hazelwood legacy costs, health insurance costs, and some comprehensive regional university funding. Again, I'll provide a little bit more detail as we proceed. Total budget for fiscal year '24 for the University of Houston system stands at $2.33 billion. That's a $263.3 million increase over fiscal year '23. $125.8 million of that increase is associated with the operating budget, and the $137.5 million increase on the capital expenditure budget. As a reminder, the capital expenditure budget will fluctuate year over year depending on how fast projects are moving through the pipeline to end of construction, as well as the backfilling of any new projects into the budget. Our CapEx budget is primarily funded by state support, either through the reimbursement for debt service, through the higher education funds, which are used for capital expenditures, gifts, or revenue-backed, new revenue produced by our universities that is then backed by bonds generally to support those projects. Next slide. So here you see the operating budget kind of at the next level, looking at it by university, and you can see the change by university. We'll go into a little bit more detail on the operating revenue by university on the next slide. But again, here's the $125.8 million increase in the operating budget broken down by each university. Next slide, please. What we're showing here is drilling down to the next level and looking at the operating budget by the different revenue sources. So state appropriations, you can see that they are increasing 15.8%, or over $60 million between fiscal year '24 versus fiscal year '23. So if you look at columns F and G on the PowerPoint, 96% of that increase comes from the affordability plan, as well as the Texas University Fund distribution of $30.5 million, additional funding in the form of institutional enhancement to the University of Houston from the legislature, as well as some additional formula funding through the health-related formula for the College of Medicine. If you look at the second line, which is HEAF and NRUF, not much of a change there. That small change is a function of Stephen F. Austin actually moving into the UT system. They used to receive HEAF allocation, and now their portion is being redistributed among other HEAF-eligible universities. Tuition and fees, you can see the decrease on line 3, going from $781 million budgeted in '23 to $764 million in FY24. That is a reflection of, as I described, the budgeted assumptions within our universities for fiscal year '24. Other operating income, you see increasing by $54 million. That is predominantly our auxiliaries. It includes, of course, athletics and their increase in the various revenue sources within athletics to the tune of $20 million. Pleased to report that as their revenues are growing, it's afforded us the opportunity to reduce our subsidy to athletics by $5 million in fiscal year '24. With respect to line 5, you see an $18.6 million year-over-year change. That's predominantly in sponsored research, as well as financial aid, whether federal, state, or otherwise. Endowments and gifts, a small increase of $6.4 million. We budget conservatively with regards to endowments and gifts, but should we exceed our budget, we're able to increase the budget and make sure we spend those dollars in accordance with the donor's requirements. Next slide, please. This is really looking at the operating revenue and giving you a little bit of context between '23-24 and the last 3 years of actual, so you have some context of what does the '24 budget look like. If you look at fiscal year in state appropriations, you look at fiscal year '20, for example, you'd have to back down from that. There was a one-time $45 million allocation from the state for the law and hobby building. Fiscal year '21, there were state budget cuts. If you look at column B on line 1, and then in column C, those cuts were restored. And then in 2023, you see some increase that was a result of the debt service appropriation they provided to us as a result of the CCAP funding that they awarded us in 2021. HEAF, again, not much of a change. Tuition and fees, we talked about the budgeted assumption in terms of enrollment decreases, yet if you look at line 3, columns B and C, that would kind of go against the grain because you would see an increase. Well, that's a result of the fact that we also had tuition rate increases during those years. So the revenues are masked by those rate increases, and without those rate increases, you would have seen a dip in there as well. Other operating, just point to your attention, 2021, there was a dip, but of course that was the COVID period. Contracts and grants, again, you can see for fiscal year '24, $324 million. Juxtapose that to actuals in the prior 3 years. Those prior 3 years included a lot of the stimulus funds from the federal government. And again, endowment, income and gifts, if you see the $87 million proposed for '24, not materially different than '23, and the 3-year average of actuals for the prior 3 years was about $101 million. So again, we budget conservatively and can spend up as those funds are received. Next slide. This is looking at the expenditure side of the budget. So obviously we produce and present to the board a balanced budget. If we look at student success, where is that money actually being invested? Of course, it's in athletics. It's merit, it's financial aid, scholarships, and other auxiliaries. National competitiveness, that represents a $45 million increase year over year in expenditures, principally at the University of Houston. That's the hiring of additional Presidential Frontier faculty and Aspire faculty. It's some merit and market for faculty, as well as sponsored research expenditures. And infrastructure and administration, that $18 million increase year over year is basically staff merit and market adjustments, as well as investing in some compliance initiatives and other security, insurance, and other matters. With respect to community advancement, small increase in expenditures, principally within our clinics and the Small Business Development Center. I'll skip through in the interest of time page 8. Look at page 9, the capital budget by university. Again, as I said, this will vary depending year over year, depending on what's in the pipeline, but you can see an increase of $137.5 million in the capital budget. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see in more detail what makes up that increase. The total project cost among all of these projects is $977 million. But of course, what we're presenting to you today is the projected expenditures of that $977 million for fiscal year 24. So obviously, there are future years' expenditures that will occur. Again, the primary sources for the funding for these projects come from state support, revenues from our universities, as well as gifts. And if we scroll to the next slide, you will see combined the operating capital budget, $263.3 million increase year over year. Other than that, I did want to mention that, as I mentioned earlier about our higher education funds that we received from the state for capital investment, we received $79 million budgeted for fiscal year 24. 43 million of that will be invested in academic infrastructure, 10.5 million in faculty startup and research infrastructure, 16 million of it in deferred maintenance and life safety, and 9 million in campus security, IT, and other infrastructure investments. I'd be happy to continue on to the next level if you'd like, but it's basically looking at each university individually, but the message is basically going to be the same since our universities make up the consolidated budget. So happy to pause here and take any direction you'd like to provide, Mr. Chairman.
Ram, great explanation of the entire budget, which is obviously extremely important to us going forward. Does anybody have any other questions for Mr. Bartlett? Okay, may I hear a motion to approve this item as presented? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? This item is hereby approved. Next item for discussion is item D. Approval is requested to delegate authority to the Chancellor to negotiate and execute contracts exceeding $1 million for the purchase of goods or services, excluding construction contracts at the University of Houston System. Mr. Bartlett, please present this item.
Yes, sir. I'd like to turn it over to Karen Livingston, who will present.
Today we have 9 items that require board approval. 7 are renewals or extensions of existing services, and there's 1 new program and 1 purchase of core research facility equipment. The first contract is multi-factor authentication system. This protects against unauthorized access to core systems and has a 5-year cost of $1.7 million. The next item is the new program. The Hobby School of Public Affairs will work with a vendor to create and maintain a survey panel that will allow them to contact the same people over time and provide a full sample that well represents the Houston population. This will be used for their research, and it has a 5-year cost of $3 million. The third item is for library electronic database subscriptions. This is a 1-year cost of $2.1 million. Most of what the library purchases is electronic, and this is a vendor who's a very large publisher of necessary academic journals and is the sole provider of a number of databases. The next two items are annual items presented for Houston Public Media. These are their annual programming fees for the Public Broadcasting Service and for the National Public Radio. And the annual fees for PBS will be $2.2 million, and for NPR will be $1.7 million. The next item is the University of Houston's Child and Elder Care Backup Contract. This contract provides emergency care for employees for their children or their senior dependents as a backup if their regular care falls through, and the 5-year contract has a $1.3 million cost. The next contract is for reverse osmosis water services, which provides water purification for research and lab spaces, and this is a 5-year agreement with a cost of $1.5 million. The University of Houston system-wide applicant tracking system was bid and will be updated to a new system with a 5-year cost of $1.6 million. This system tracks all applicants, both faculty and staff, through the entire process of application to the point of hire, and it becomes the single point of contact for applicants. And the final item is the purchase of equipment for a core research facility. The equipment is a reel-to-reel physical vapor deposition system, and the equipment is used in research on improving electricity and its transmission. And the $2.7 million piece of equipment will take 2 years to order, build, and assemble on site. This concludes the contracts. Are there any questions on any of them?
No questions. May I hear a motion to approve this item as presented?
Move.
Second? All in
Second.
favor? This item is hereby approved. Item E is our next action item for the committee's consideration. Approval is requested to delegate authority to the chancellor to negotiate and execute construction contracts exceeding $1 million for projects at the University of Houston system. Mr. Bartlett, will you please introduce this item?
Yes, I'd like to turn it over to David Oliver, who will present on this item.
Thank you, Ryan. We are requesting approval to delegate authority to the chancellor to negotiate and execute construction contracts for exceeding $1 million for projects at the University of Houston system. I have 6 contracts that I'd like approval today. The first one is the electrical repair services contract. This is an on-demand contract that supports the electrical infrastructure for the campus. We are currently anticipating a spend of $2.5 million over the next 5 years. The second one is a contract for Wortham Theater rigging repairs. The system supports our theater department under the College of Arts. It has reached end of life. It is in need of replacement and modernization. So we are requesting authority up to $2.5 million for those repairs. Tess, can you hear me? I'm sorry. Oh, okay, excellent. Get a little closer. The third contract we are requesting authority is Welcome Center garage repairs and some mitigation efforts that were required. We had a vehicle impact the structural members of the garage, Welcome Center garage, at high speed and compromise the structural integrity of the garage. So we're requesting authority up to $1.1 million. We anticipate recovery of this via insurance claims. We have a project down at University of Houston Victoria for an operations and storage building. This will be a relatively small pre-engineered facility that will support their facilities operations. And we're requesting $1.6 million for that project. That is being funded through CCAP funds. We are also requesting a new parking lot in addition to demolishing the TOTA building at University of Houston Victoria. This will, of course, develop more parking adjacent to the Ben Wilson corridor and remove the TOTA building. It also includes an entry into the new housing, the Smith housing, to accommodate the parking. So that is at the $2 million. And then last, we have a central plant upgrades here on the main campus that will install a new chiller at our central plant, which is required to support 2 new capital projects on the campus, the Innovation Hub and the academic building for the Hobby School of Public Arts. So requesting $4.5 million for that new chiller. So that concludes the list. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Any further questions? May I hear a motion to approve this item as presented?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? This item is hereby approved. Item F is our next action item for the committee's consideration. Approval is requested to modify banking and investment. Here's my page here. resolutions for the University of Houston system. Mr. Bartlett, will you please introduce this item?
Yes, so as a housekeeping item, whenever there are changes in our authorized signatories on our banking and investment accounts, we bring those to the board for approval, and that's what we're bringing here to today. There are some changes in the treasurer's office and some changes at the universities, University of Houston Downtown, Clear Lake, and Victoria. The signature authority to transact, whether in terms of moving monies out of the bank accounts, is consolidated. Other than with Karin and myself, it would be the individuals within the treasurer's office, which is most appropriate. At the University of Houston Downtown, Clear Lake, and Victoria, there's one or more individuals who are identified to have endorsement authority if there were a check made payable to their university so as to deposit it. Other than that, they do not have signatory authority on our accounts. It's consolidated at the University of Houston System Treasurer's Office. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. If no further questions, may I hear a motion to approve this item as presented? Second?
Second.
All in favor? This item is hereby approved. I would now like to move to amend our agenda and move into section 2 listed on your agenda, the executive session prior to discussion of agenda item G. The committee will now go into executive session pursuant to the sections of the Texas Government Code listed on page 2 of your agenda.
works out much better for me.
I commend you on that guidance on the cocktail party, Mr. Chairman. I think that's a great move.
But that's at the restaurant, right? Tell me. Right, on the terrace?
I mean, you're trying to move it to 5. I just don't think they should be drinking that early. I personally have a 6:30 rule, so.
In the Finance and Administration Committee meeting, the Regents met in executive session and consulted with Senior Vice Chancellor Bartlett and General Counsel on various legal matters. There was no action taken in executive session. Item G is our next action item for the committee's consideration. Approval is requested to modify the University of Houston system debt policy and master swap policy, just tightening our fiscal risk to the University of Houston. May I hear a motion to approve this item as presented?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor? This item is hereby approved. Following the committee's approval of the last action item addressed, I would like to request that the 5 action items considered by the committee be placed on the board's consent docket agenda for final board approval as follows. Number 1, approval is requested for the University of Houston system fiscal year 2024 financial plan and budget. 2, approval is requested to delegate authority to the chancellor to negotiate and execute contracts exceeding $1 million for the purchase of goods or services, excluding construction contracts at the University of Houston system. 3, approval is requested to delegate authority to the chancellor to negotiate and execute construction contracts exceeding $1 million for projects at the University of Houston system. 4, approval is requested to modify banking and investment resolutions for the University of Houston system. And 5, approval is requested to modify the University of Houston system debt policy and master swap policy. May I hear a motion to place these 5 action items on the board's consent docket agenda? Motion?
Yes, so moved.
Second? Second. Got it. These 5 action items, unanimously approved by the committee, will be placed on the board's consent docket agenda for final approval at the Board of Regents meeting held tomorrow, August 24th, 2023. Does anyone have any additional questions or further comments for the committee? Hearing none, this committee is hereby adjourned.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right, so we have 1 hour. I think we have another guest that wants to come in and just say, Senator Rush, this is what happens when you're at the post office. Senator Swartner, who's chair of Business and Commerce and who's been a big friend of the University of Houston when we've needed him always, and he just wanted to come in and say hello real quick. So, just to tell you a little bit about him, he got his BS in pharmacy from University of Texas at Austin, got in the House in 11, he's been a senator for 10 years. Hometown is Georgetown, which is District 5, and he chairs business and